In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, today's gospel gives us a bit of a grisly story. The head of John the Baptist on a platter. It's a foretelling of the fact that this gospel is not going to be an easy one. It's not going to be a message that doesn't contain violence, sacrifice, and ultimately require life itself. But it doesn't take away the fact that it is a grisly story. As a child, I was always fascinated by this one, as you just have imaginings of John the Baptist's head on a platter. So I brought in a picture of John the Baptist's head on a platter, and I invite you to look at it when you come up for communion today. It was a very, very, I don't want to say popular, but it's one of the religious images that great works of art portray frequently, more frequently than we might think. You can imagine the great masters painting images of the crucifixion or saints undergoing their martyrdoms. But John the Baptist's head on a platter was also particularly fascinating to artists. And there are all kinds of platters and versions of John's head in history. And there came a point when the Victorians, particularly, decided they didn't like seeing in their house, often in their dining room, a servant presenting the head of John the Baptist on a platter. So what did they do? They painted it out. And one of the great joys in my life was being able to take an art history course at Trinity College in Oxford, England, when I was an undergraduate. And one of the studies we looked at were all the different ways that John the Baptist's head got painted out of paintings. So you'd have the servant coming in and presenting something beautiful instead of the head. And I brought in a picture of the kind of fruit platter they would paint right over John the Baptist's head to cover up this grisly scene. And I'd like to draw for us today two metaphors to understand our gospel. And the first metaphor is this one. Violence and covering it up. We live in a world that is a difficult, violent, dangerous place. And sometimes we have the desire to cover it up, or not think about it, or ignore it. And that is not what discipleship is about. But yet, at the same time, we are called in our world today, in our difficult, violent, and tragic world sometimes, we're called to keep our eye on something beautiful, on something wonderful, on a vision that is beyond, above, and goes around and through violence and discord that helps heal the world. We get inspiration from the goodness that helps us deal with the tragedy that we can experience in life. And so there's a dichotomy here. There's a dichotomy of not covering up so much as seeing through. We're called to be, if we're looking at this metaphor, we're called to be art, science, X-ray machines, and to be able to scan through the pigmentation and the layers of paint and to see what we need to see and then we need to see the beauty and the joy of creation beyond it. So that's my first metaphor I want to give us today from our gospel. The second metaphor, many of you have heard me use multiple times because it's one of my favorite ones. But it comes from another work of art. It comes from the icon called the Sinai Christ, which was discovered at St. Catherine's Monastery. It's the oldest image of Jesus in existence in the world today because of the iconoclastic controversy that destroyed all of the images of Jesus. This was preserved because it was hidden in the desert. And it has that unique attribute about it of being a metaphor as well. There's duality in the face. If you've visited the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, there's a beautiful bronze of Abraham Lincoln in the bottom of the Capitol building, and it has the same duality. Artists like to use this metaphor, where one half of the face is one thing and the other half is another. If we look at Jesus' face here on the left, we see the divine face. We see the face of God with clear eyes, an open ear, and just a general tranquility. If we look at the right-hand side of the face, we see the human face, the sad eye, the hair drawn over the ears because we don't often hear what God is trying to say to us. And whether or not it is a coincidence of history or the author's intent, we'll never know why it looks like Jesus is crying on that side of the face. We won't know whether that's original. But the Sinai Christ is a metaphor for us as well. That you and I are called to seek the divine in other people, in our world, and most importantly, and often with the most difficulty, we're called to seek the divine in ourselves and give thanks for that precious and beautiful soul that God has created each of us as, and to live through the times of our world with the knowledge that we do so as beloved